look at the organizations that were involved in a certain, in this case, it was policy or certain sort of certain top level categorization. And then we said, right, what data do we have and how do we get the message into the company so that it begins to spread, so we find the person that we need? And what it meant was that, say, in one organization, there was one job title that was of use. Everyone would just hit that one person, and they'd all hit them with different things. And it was just like, I want to speak to the director. And the director would just be like, shut off to any sort of messaging, because he's like, why are these people just shouting at me? And what we did was go, right, well, we've got 10 records in this organization that we know is important to us. And of those 10 records, there's 5 admin, there's 3 marketing, there's this many finance people, blah, blah, blah. And then we looked at it from that company perspective and applied the messaging to the individual contacts to say, let me speak to the person who's best suited within this organization. And so the messaging was, rather than going direct to the person and saying, you are the director of finance, I want to speak to you because your responsibilities cover. What we did was sort of raise the messaging up a level and say, your organization is responsible for, and we want to speak to the person who is involved. And it's just, we open the channel up.
Yeah. And in doing that, we understood the data and the database from an organizational level. So once we understood what the key organizations were and how many contact records we had in them and what roles they were in, we could then extrapolate from that to build intelligence about the standard organizational makeup of a sector. And then we could, from there, we were able to identify other organizations available and based on similarity between company name and web domain. And also we were able to build more data in the job roles which we'd noticed were common across the sector, and then have a more realistic expectation of how big the database could be.
Exactly. And then what we're able to do, it generated more information because we looked at it from that level. If you're just looking for finance directors and you are drawing that resource from available sources, being, well, I mean, we had all resources. We had open data resources, we scraped the web, blah, blah, blah. We had pretty much, we could buy as much data as was required. I mean, that organization had all the data that you could possibly need for that sector, right? I mean, everything that's available they had, but it didn't mean they had every record for every organization. And where we were successful is that we might look at an organization and say, we don't have that specific job title, but we do have these. How do we communicate to this organization so that we get to speak to the right person? Now, classification is very simple when the systems of classification are established. So NHS, well, that's easy. If it's got .nhs in its email, that means it's an NHS thing.
Yeah.
If it's a .gov.uk, they work for the government. These are very, very easy ways in which you can immediately classify junk. As soon as you move away from the public sector into the private sector, then what happens is you lose that capacity to be able to classify clearly. And as you said, then all you've got are SIC codes.
Yeah.
And SIC codes are useless for any sort of serious classification. So as you enter out into the world, almost, you might say, what happens is that suddenly with that, losing the ability to be able to understand that recognizing an organization for doing something in an easy way, a classification, then what happens is that it becomes much more difficult to be able to confidently be accurate in relation to what you're doing. And the one thing I noticed, I spoke before about the people even within our organization then who didn't understand what we were doing. The reason why they didn't understand what we were doing is because they tried to do, there are certain, if you take this approach and your data is not accurate, it's worse.
Unraveled quickly. Yeah.
It's worse than if you just don't bother. And so what happens is that, like, if you said to me, Matt, as you say, I want to talk to a specific, data centers, and all I've got are IT in SIC codes. It's impossible for me to confidently tailor a message that's going to communicate to these people in a way that's going to engage without without the capacity to know, because our thing was all like, we know these people are, NHS, for example. I can confidently talk about things that are important to the NHS. But if I've got an IT thing, as you pointed out, using that example, if I want to talk to data centers, and I start talking to a local IT infrastructure, developed, and I start talking about data center requirements, not only will they ignore me, what will happen is they will start to report me as spam. They will start to phone up and get really angry about the fact they've been contacted. And most marketers at that point just go, I'm not doing this anymore. This is depressing. And most analysts go, I don't want to do this anymore because you're destroying my data. And so what happens is it kind of all falls away. So
there's a fundamental difference between data and marketing. There's data can test till they're blue in the face on a dev, a test, a UAT, and then eventually production environment. In marketing, there is no dev and test environment. It's if you mess the first message up.
It hasn't stopped. Even for me recently,
you've lost them forever. Yeah.
I know, it's the highs and lows are incredible. I did a campaign where I tested an idea, and it was incredible. It was like, and I know what success looks like as a marketer. Is I send the message out through an email, and suddenly it starts going dong, 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 and that's like, I've done it. And then then the flip of that is you get the same sound, but each email is never speak to me again. Destroy all the data that and it's like, and it's so the distinction between those two moments is so thin almost. What happens is it's like, up until now, right, it required an expert, and I've had this conversation with these experts. The technology now exists where you can have a little bit of understanding and then use the technology to expand upon that. So if qual is the expertise, and quant is the coding ability, then what happens is that the data that is openly available now requires less qual and more quant. So let's talk. So here's, because this is an interesting question I'm still covering, and it's an argument. I recently have worked with experts across a number of fields in both industry and government, right? Sat with teams of analysts responsible for understanding what a sector looks like. And in each case was confident of my ability to be able to define a supply chain based on me not being an expert, because I knew that I could, in this case, scrape websites to analyze what organizations did and then make assumptions based on that. So, like, is it possible to say that a company does something by the way they describe themselves on their website? And then are you able to create universes off the back of that, and then use probably the same open data sources to find all the people who work there? Like, for me, that makes real sense. But
makes a lot of sense.
There's going to be a lot,
because on a company's core website description, you will get the most honest categorization of the company, far better than the company's house data, where the company's house returns will be filled in by, I don't know, someone in the finance team or even a secretary who has no vested interest in getting the SIC code right, because it's not a mandatory field and it's not legally enforceable to get your SIC code right. So there's no incentive to do it. When you're writing the website spiel, not spiel is probably the catch-all for the about us, industries we serve, products we do. Your motivation for getting that on point and accurate and data optimized, your motivation to do that is to sell to the right people and to get your website up the Google searches. And to do that, you have to keyword optimize it, and you have to make it accurate. So that as a resource to scrape and build and sector databases around is ideal, is it not?
It is. I think so. Anyway, let's put
far more ideal than.
But then it comes back to one-eyed king in a blind, the one-eyed man in the blind, in the kingdom of the blind. SIC. So here's the narrative. From this perspective. So if you have the ability to be able to classify organizations simply, you can see great success using this approach. As soon as you move away from the more easily classifiable sectors, then you have to rely on things like SIC codes, which are not fit for purpose. Now you have the capacity, potentially, by being able to use open data, like the web content, LinkedIn searches through Bing, like there's lots of different ways you can pull GDPR compliant legitimate data to accurately identify things and people.
I mean, well, even
and that is fundamentally better than SIC codes. I mean, it's still not perfect, right? Because what happens is that I can write amazingly accurate web content for my services, which is fully SEO optimized and all that sort of stuff. And, from a sales perspective, I might not be the person that a marketer wants. But when you take this approach, you are talking about thousands of records. Like the majority of account-based marketing approaches are like 50 companies, maybe 100. But, like I think that this attack, if you will, allows you to, and well, the main thing here is that you can pull a large amount of data, and then you need to work it. So yeah, you're bringing together this kind of mass with accuracy. Yeah, it's just it makes utter sense to me.
I'm going to pretend that I am a marketing manager on an exhibition on an enormous exhibition. I'm doing a bit of the exhibition, and it's an exhibition on blockchain, and I want to fill my seminar theatre, get as much sponsorship revenue from, let's say, smart contract blockchains. Okay, I've done it last year, and I know a smart. I'd say I have like 600 people attended my seminar last year. There's probably about 450 companies across there. The data's fairly clean. Could do with I have an adequate data team who could kind of like run an effective unique companies list from that and parse the domains out from the email addresses and standardize. I can clean it for you. And basically, I've been collecting some taxonomy through a form field saying, and I know roughly where their geolocation is. I've collected I've asked them how many employees they've got on a kind of one standard ubiquitous 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 50, 100 to 250, 250 plus, and I've asked them what their I've done a kind of an industry field saying what are you in? Are you a smart contract blockchain? Are you a privacy blockchain, just a standard store of value like new Bitcoin, or are you a kind of you Dogecoin, or I don't know, Shibu, like a
Shibu, yeah. Well,
and I want you an agents field to get to build me the best database possible of
UK or international,
new smart contract blockchain chains and potential and users of them.
UK or international?
Sorry,
UK or international?
European. EMEA.
Yeah. Okay. So right, there's a few things in there. So the first thing I would do is begin to approach it like, because when someone's talking like that, it's like you hear it a lot. I've already got all the data. Why would I want you to find me more? Right?
Well, I need more.
I've got this.
No, I'm saying I'm trying to be a dream.
Yeah. No. I get it.
My target's gone
up.
I mean, more, but I have some.
But anyone, 100%. But anyone who's talking to me saying we've got this data and it's classified by this and it's all that sort of stuff, there's that immediate problem where that's part of the issue, because that's the bit you got to clean. If you rely on someone else to give you the information on their organization on a form, I think we can agree that it's okay, but it's not. I wouldn't. That would be the last thing I would go to.
As your fictitious blockchain client, I'm happy for you to tell me.
Yeah.
My segmentations are wrong and discard.
Yeah, I would congratulate you on the success of your previous seminar and say how brilliant is it segmented, and suggest that the thing about that sort of stuff is the first thing we would do is try to verify that as much as possible. Yeah, I mean, so there's two aspects. So the qual aspect would be just the research bit. You know, you'd be amazed how many people don't take the effort to just go and research other things or just find out what they need to do. There is that kind of element of it. And that's kind of standard and really it's what most people do. Yeah, the bit that excites me the most is the technology that exists now, which is these web scraping things. So the great thing is that if you are able, let's say, for example, the data you described is well classified. So you look at it and you go, yeah, you're telling the truth. It's like everything is well structured. It's clear in terms of what it is. You know, I've got the ability to be able to really latch onto the work that exists. Yeah, I mean, again, I'll big up the Data City. It's like there's a tool that allows you to input the websites of the organizations that have been discussed and then use that to find likes, similarities, you know, basically look at the web content, use machine learning and say, these are the kind of organizations we're talking the same. Now,
what data you're extracting from, because I've given you the Data City tool has scans them against using technology against an internal database. What's it looking for to get this similarity?
So
keywords or is it
so it's keywords, but it's more than, right? So this is the thing about the technology, right? So because most people, if you pull this right back, find me the reason why if I didn't have the Data City tool, I would go through the websites of the clients that existed and I would pull the keywords of importance and I would use some sort of programming language to try and be as accurate as possible to drive results through search engines to find others, right? You know,
you extract keywords
near AI and smart chain and blockchain 5+ not something, you know, like we're all relatively capable of being able to build some sort of structure that allows us to, you know, get rid of noise, find other organizations that might do things. And the reason why I like the Data City though is it's the only tool that doesn't have an algorithm in the way that starts to try and sell me stuff. Like they have a full scrape of every organization they can get a hold of. It's UK mostly, but it's moving into Europe. And the thing that there is that it just purely looks at the structure of words in relation to each other. So, and because this is the really important bit, as my client, what I would say to you is this: by the sounds of it, you already have most of the organizations operating in that space, right? The truth is that there's probably not that many. And as you say, they kind of pop up quite quick. And, you know, you probably got 50%, maybe 75%. What's really interesting is when you begin to use tools like the Data City, which look at texts and then provide you possibilities, there's another qual aspect, which is going through it and going, look, there's a new thing and it's here and it's not quite what we were looking for. But if I take this bit and then I focus in on that and expand out, that network thing we were talking about, I might be sitting here with this cluster of data. I might find a little cluster here. I zoom into this and then this opens up another area down here or up here. Where am I? Up here. So what it is you might be able to...
You're able to take my fairly confident pool of smart contract blockchains, find a similarity between their keywords and between the area they may be the type of people, organizations you may be using them to upload and pay smart contracts with, and then it's a recommender system for that data
100%,
as an add-on into my exhibition.
The way I would pitch it to you as a client is I turn around and say, look, not only you know the technology, and let's say that the bit you've talked about is one space in this bigger thing. I go, look, you've already got that relatively full, but maybe there's a growth area in there that no one's noticed yet. You know, like you'll suddenly see a load of organizations popping up who are talking about the same thing you're doing, and it's like, I can't tell you how many times I've looked at something and gone, oh, I've never thought, wow, look, someone's got that and they're bringing it together. And there's a few of them and they're looking really interesting. So there's this, real time is a keyword that's put around these sort of things. And that's the best example of real time I can give. It's this thing about how you can use the SEO optimized keyword website descriptions to not only find more of the same, but find things that are sitting around it, and then understand the patterns of that, and then be able to expand through. So it's not as simple as finding more data on the thing you want. It's seeing all the data that's
using
available.
what you have already has, and what else could, what closely relates.
Which is probably the thing that gets people a bit unclear, because they're like, well, I don't want that, I just want this. And like, and you go, well, but look, there's value, you know, all you need to do is expand your universe and focus your message there. There's growth there.